When I first saw her photo in that dating app, I had no idea I would become part of a story that would destroy someone's life forever. My name is Gary and I work as a dance instructor in Maple Grove. I give private lessons, help people feel the rhythm, find confidence in their movements. The job isn't bad, flexible schedule, different clients, decent income. That day I was just scrolling through Tinder between classes when I came across Carolina's profile. She looked different from the others. There was some special depth in her eyes, as if behind each photo hid an entire story. The description read, "Writer. Looking for inspiration in unexpected places." I swiped right. We matched. She wrote first, "Do you teach people to dance their truth or just repeat steps?" That phrase hooked me. We started messaging and each message was like a step in a complex dance. She talked about her novels, about how hard it is to create stories about love when everything in life is predictable. I talked about my students, about how dance can change a person. A week later we met at a small cafe. Carolina was even more beautiful in person. She sat by the window, twirling a coffee cup in her hands and looking somewhere far away. When I approached, she smiled as if we had known each other for years. We talked about everything. About art, about life, about dreams. She mentioned that she had been married to Oliver for 8 years. He's a graphic designer, a good person, does everything right. But somewhere along the way they lost the spark between them. "You understand what I mean?" she asked. I understood. Or thought I understood. Our meetings became regular. At first just coffee, then walks in the park, and then we crossed a line that shouldn't have been crossed. She said that Oliver was immersed in his projects, that they lived like apartment neighbors, not like a married couple. I believed every word because I wanted to believe. One day Carolina suggested we go away together for the weekend. Said she needed to rest from everything, find inspiration for a new book. We chose a resort hotel outside the city. 2 days when we could just be ourselves without regard for the rest of the world. That weekend was like a dream. We danced on the terrace under the stars, laughed, shared secrets. She talked about her childhood in Texas, about how she always dreamed of writing stories. I talked about my path to dancing, about how movement helps me feel alive. But after returning, something changed. Carolina became distant, responded to messages less often. When we finally met, she looked worried. "Gary, we need to talk," she said. I already knew what would come next. She was pregnant. With my child. "I can't keep this." Carolina looked at the floor. "Oliver will notice. He'll start asking questions." I had an abortion. Those words hit me like a punch to the gut. I didn't know what to feel, relief, pain, guilt. All at once. "We should stop," she continued. "This has gone too far." I wanted to argue, but what could I say? She was right. This was a mistake from the very beginning. We parted ways. I tried to return to normal life, to my dance lessons, to routine. But thoughts of Carolina wouldn't let go. I wrote to her, she didn't respond. I waited, hoping she would change her mind, that we could find some way out. And then everything fell apart completely. A month later Carolina called me in the middle of the night. Her voice was trembling. "Oliver knows. His friend saw us near that hotel. Told him everything." My heart stopped. "What happens now?" "He's packing his things. Says he's leaving." "Gary," I thought, maybe we could try? I mean, we could be together for real. I was silent too long. In that pause was everything. My fears, doubts, understanding that our relationship was built on deception. "Carolina, I'm not sure." "Not sure?" Her voice became sharp. "Gary, I lost my marriage because of you. You lost it yourself. It escaped from me. I was just part of your story. Another character for your book." She hung up. The following weeks were terrible. Carolina bombarded me with messages, sometimes pleading, sometimes angry. She said she loved me, then cursed me. I realized I had gotten into a whirlpool from which there was no way out. Oliver, as it turned out, acted methodically and coldly. He didn't make scenes, didn't threaten. He just filed for divorce. Carolina tried to explain something, fix something, but he was unmoved. They divided the property equally, sold the apartment, split the money. No children, no special obligations. But what Oliver did next shocked everyone. He wrote a very detailed post on social media. Didn't name names, but described the entire situation. How his wife met someone on Tinder, how she cheated, how she had an abortion. The post went viral in the local Maple Grove community. People started guessing who it was about. Then someone dug up that Carolina used real stories from her life in her novels. In her latest book, which had just been published, there was a scene strikingly similar to our first meeting at the cafe. Readers started leaving negative reviews, accusing her of insincerity and exploiting real people for creativity. The publishing house terminated her contract for the next book. And then came my time to pay. One of my clients, whose husband turned out to be a lawyer, told him about my reputation. Rumors about a relationship with a married woman spread quickly. Clients started canceling lessons. Someone left a terrible review online, hinting that I seduce married women under the guise of dance lessons. I lost most of my students within a few weeks. Carolina continued writing to me, but now her messages were just empty. She said we were both victims of circumstances, that Oliver was exaggerating, that everything would work out. But I saw the truth. We both destroyed our own lives because we mistook selfishness for love. When she suggested meeting to talk about the future, I refused. Finally, Gary, after everything we've been through? That's exactly why, I answered. We don't need to be together. We don't suit each other. We never did. After that conversation, I blocked her number. Oliver, meanwhile, changed beyond recognition. He started running every morning, joined a gym. His friends said he spent more time with them, met new people through shared interests. He even got himself a dog, a golden retriever named Charlie. I saw him several times in town. He looked happier, freer, as if he had shed a burden he didn't even know about. Carolina rented a small apartment near the area where she and Oliver used to live. Sometimes I heard from mutual acquaintances that she saw him on morning runs or at the supermarket. Just saw him, like two strangers who once shared a life. And I remained alone in my apartment, with a ruined business and reputation. Had to look for a regular job, got hired as an assistant at a dance studio where nobody knew my story. Doing the same thing, only for much less money and without the former recognition. Sometimes at night I lie awake and think about that moment in the cafe when Carolina asked if I teach people to dance their truth. Now I understand the answer. Most people don't want to dance their truth. They want to dance a beautiful illusion until the music ends and they have to return to reality. I was an illusion for Carolina. She was an illusion for me. And Oliver turned out to be the only real one in this story, real enough to let go of what brought pain and build something new. He won, although at first it seemed he had lost everything. But the story didn't end there. What I didn't know was that Oliver had been planning something far more calculated than just a social media post. He was a graphic designer, and he understood the power of visual storytelling better than anyone. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, a new Instagram account appeared. It was called The Reality Behind Romance, and it featured beautifully designed infographics about relationship red flags, emotional manipulation, and the psychology of affairs. The content was professional, engaging, and disturbingly specific. Within weeks, it had thousands of followers. The account never mentioned names, but anyone from Maple Grove who followed both Oliver and Carolina could connect the dots. Each post seemed to mirror an aspect of what had happened. The excitement of forbidden romance, the justifications cheaters make, the devastation left behind. Carolina's publisher might have dropped her, but Oliver's new project was gaining traction. He started a podcast called Rebuilding After Betrayal, where he interviewed others who had experienced infidelity. His voice was calm, empathetic, never vengeful. He talked about healing, about recognizing manipulation, about the importance of self-worth. The podcast became surprisingly popular. People appreciated his honesty and his lack of bitterness. He never revealed his own story in detail, but listeners could sense he spoke from experience. Within 6 months, he had sponsorship deals with therapy apps and self-improvement platforms. Meanwhile, Carolina's world continued to shrink. Her literary agent dropped her after the scandal affected her marketability. The book she had been working on, a romance novel about a married woman finding herself through an affair, was dead in the water. No publisher would touch it now. She tried to reinvent herself, starting a blog about authentic storytelling and writing through pain, but the comments section was brutal. Former readers who felt betrayed by her using real people in her fiction showed no mercy. Some accused her of being a narcissist who viewed everyone around her as material for her stories. I watched all this unfold from a distance, my own life still in pieces. The dance studio where I worked as an assistant paid barely enough to cover rent. I had gone from running my own successful private practice to cleaning mirrors and mopping floors after classes. One evening as I was closing up the studio, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. My stomach dropped. I thought it might be Carolina using a different phone. But it wasn't. Gary, this is Marcus, Oliver's friend. The one who told him about you and Carolina. We need to talk. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. Marcus was the one who had seen us at the resort hotel. The one who had started this entire chain of events. Part of me wanted to ignore it, but curiosity won. We met at a diner on the edge of town. Marcus was a tall guy with graying hair and tired eyes. He looked like someone who carried the weight of difficult decisions. "I didn't ask you here to lecture you," he started, stirring his coffee. "I asked you here because I think you should know something about Oliver's plan." "What plan?" Marcus leaned back. "Oliver's not just rebuilding his life. He's systematically dismantling Carolina's career and reputation. That Instagram account? The podcast? It's all targeted. He's creating a narrative that will follow her forever." "She deserves it," I said, though the words felt hollow. "Maybe," Marcus nodded. "But here's what you don't know. Oliver's planning to expand his brand. He wants to write a book. And in that book he's going to tell the whole story. Not just about Carolina. About you too." My blood ran cold. "He can't do that." "He can and he will. He's already spoken to a literary agent. The angle is perfect. Betrayed husband finds healing and helps others. The affair with the dance instructor who seduced his wife? That's a compelling subplot. He won't use your real name, but anyone who knows you will figure it out." "Why are you telling me this?" Marcus looked at me hard. "Because I think what Oliver went through was terrible. But I also think revenge has a point where it stops being about justice and starts being about cruelty. He's my friend, but I don't agree with everything he's doing." I went home that night feeling sick. Just when I thought the worst was over, it was starting again. Oliver wasn't just moving on, he was building an empire on the rubble of what happened. And I was going to be immortalized as the villain in his story. The next few weeks were agonizing. I couldn't focus on work. I jumped every time my phone buzzed. I started having nightmares about public exposure, about my face on some book cover, about everyone I'd ever known reading the details of my mistakes. Then Carolina called. I had unblocked her number a few weeks earlier in a moment of weakness, and now I regretted it. "Gary, I heard about the book." Her voice was frantic. "We have to do something. We have to stop him." "There's nothing we can do," I said flatly. "We could tell our side of the story. We could write our own book. Explain that it wasn't just about betrayal, it was about two people who found connection in a world that had become cold and mechanical." "Carolina, stop. Just stop. You don't understand," she was almost shouting now. "He's destroying everything I've worked for. And he's going to destroy you too. We have to fight back." "No," I said firmly. "We were wrong. What we did was wrong. And now we're facing the consequences. That's how it works." She hung up on me. Again. But her words stuck with me. Not because I agreed with her, but because they revealed something I had been trying to ignore. Carolina still didn't get it. She still thought this was about winning and losing, about controlling the narrative. She couldn't accept that some mistakes don't get fixed, they just have to be lived with. 2 months later, Oliver's book deal was announced publicly. The title was After the Fall, Finding Yourself When Trust Breaks. The description was vague but compelling. Pre-orders started immediately. I braced myself for the inevitable exposure. But something unexpected happened. The advanced chapters that Oliver's publisher released focused almost entirely on his journey of healing. There were mentions of the affair, but they were brief and factual. He didn't sensationalize it. He didn't make me or Carolina into monsters. He simply told the truth about the pain, about the process of rebuilding, about the lessons he learned. It was somehow worse than if he had attacked us. His restraint, his maturity, his growth, it all highlighted how much we had failed by comparison. The book launched 6 months later and became a surprise bestseller. Oliver did a book tour, appeared on podcasts, gave interviews. He was articulate and thoughtful. When asked about the details of his wife's affair, he would say, "That's not what this book is about. This book is about what comes after. About choosing to grow rather than remain bitter." People loved him for it. Carolina, meanwhile, had moved on to her third failed project. She had tried writing under a pseudonym, but her style was too recognizable. She had tried pivoting to self-help, but who wanted advice from someone whose own life was a cautionary tale? She had even attempted to launch a Patreon for unfiltered creative content, but attracted only a handful of subscribers. I ran into her one afternoon at a coffee shop, ironically the same one where we had first met in person. She looked older, worn down. The sparkle that had first attracted me was gone. "Gary," she said quietly, "can we talk? Just for a minute?" Against my better judgment, I sat down. "I've been thinking a lot," she began. "About everything that happened. About why I did what I did. Carolina. Please just listen. I think I was using you. Not consciously, but I was so obsessed with creating compelling stories that I forgot real people have real feelings. I turned my own life into a narrative, and you were just a plot device. It was the first time she had said anything that felt truly honest. I can't take back what I did, she continued. To you, to Oliver, to myself. But I want you to know that I understand now. What we did wasn't love. It was selfishness disguised as passion. I know, I said simply. Are you okay? She asked. I'm surviving. You. Same. We sat in silence for a moment. Then she stood up. I'm moving away from Maple Grove, she said. Fresh start. Different city. Maybe different name. I don't know yet. Good luck, I said, and I meant it. She nodded and walked away. I never saw her again. Oliver's success continued to grow. His podcast expanded into a whole network about relationships and personal growth. He partnered with therapists and counselors. He started a foundation that provided free counseling for people dealing with betrayal and infidelity. I saw him occasionally around town, always with Charlie the dog, often with friends. Sometimes with a woman who looked at him the way people look at someone they genuinely care about. He seemed content in a way I couldn't quite understand. As for me, I eventually worked my way back up. Started taking on a few private students again. Built my reputation slowly, honestly this time. It took years, but gradually people forgot about the scandal or decided to give me a second chance. I learned to live with what I had done. Not to justify it, not to minimize it, but to accept it as part of my story. I learned that some mistakes change you permanently, and the best you can do is try to be better than who you were. Sometimes I think about that question Carolina asked me in our first message. Do you teach people to dance their truth or just repeat steps? Now I know the answer. Most people can't handle dancing their truth. The truth is often ugly, uncomfortable, painful. So we learn the steps, we follow the rhythm, we try to make it look graceful even when we're stumbling. Oliver danced his truth. He faced his pain head-on, processed it, transformed it into something constructive. He didn't pretend it didn't hurt. He didn't seek hollow revenge. He simply decided to be better, to do better, to help others avoid what he went through. Carolina and I? We danced a lie. We pretended passion was the same as truth. We convinced ourselves that feeling something intensely meant it was real and right. We were wrong. And Oliver was right all along. Not about staying in a loveless marriage. That wasn't the point. He was right about integrity, about honesty, about the importance of facing yourself without illusions. He won not because he destroyed us, though he certainly could have. He won because he built something better from the ruins. He won because he chose growth over bitterness. And we lost not because we got caught, but because we never understood what we were really doing until it was far too late. 5 years later, I'm teaching dance again. Different studio, different city, different life. I have a small but loyal client base. I'm honest with them about what I teach. Not truth, not salvation, just movement and music and the brief joy that comes from letting your body express what words can't. It's enough. I heard through former mutual acquaintances that Oliver got married again. Not to the woman I saw him with, but to someone he met through his foundation. Someone who understood pain and healing because she had walked that path herself. I heard he's happy. Genuinely happy, in that quiet, sustainable way that comes from doing the hard work of becoming whole. I'm glad for him. I really am. As for Carolina, I have no idea where she ended up. She vanished from social media, from the literary world, from Maple Grove. Maybe she found peace somewhere. Maybe she's still running from herself. I hope for her sake that she figured it out. That she learned the same lesson I did. Some stories don't deserve to be told, some truths are too costly, and sometimes the most heroic thing you can do is simply stop being the villain. But there's more to this story that I need to tell. Something that happened years later that brought everything full circle in a way I never expected. 7 years after the affair ended, I received an email. Not from Carolina, not from Oliver, but from someone I had never heard of. The subject line read, "About your experience with Carolina Mitchell." I almost deleted it. I had moved on, built a new life. The last thing I wanted was to be dragged back into that mess. But something made me open it. The email was from a journalist named Rebecca Chin. She was working on a long-form piece about how social media and public shaming affect people's lives years after the initial incident. She had found Oliver's viral post and the subsequent fallout, and she wanted to interview everyone involved. "I'm not interested in sensationalism," she wrote. "I'm interested in what happens to people after the internet moves on. How do you rebuild? What are the lasting effects? I think your story, along with Oliver's and Carolina's, could help people understand the human cost of our online behavior." I didn't respond immediately. The idea of rehashing everything made me sick. But over the next few days I couldn't stop thinking about it. What had happened to us wasn't just our fault. It was also the result of how we handled being exposed publicly. Maybe there was value in talking about that. I agreed to an interview on the condition that my real name wouldn't be used. Rebecca agreed. We met at a neutral location, a hotel lobby in a city 2 hours away from where I now lived. Rebecca was a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a professional demeanor. She set up her recording equipment and began asking questions. "Take me back to the beginning," she said. "How did you meet Carolina?" I told her everything. Not to justify what I had done, but to be honest about how it happened. How easy it is to convince yourself that what you're feeling is real love when it's really just excitement and novelty. How you can ignore red flags when you want something badly enough. "Did you ever consider the consequences?" Rebecca asked. "Not really," I admitted. "When you're in it, you're not thinking about consequences. You're thinking about the next time you'll see them, the next message, the next moment. It's like an addiction." "What was the moment you realized what you'd done?" I thought about that. When Carolina told me she was pregnant and had gotten an abortion. That's when it became real. Before that, it was like we were playing at something. But a pregnancy and an abortion, those have permanent consequences. That's when I understood we'd crossed a line we could never uncross. Rebecca nodded, taking notes. "Tell me about the aftermath. About losing your business." I described the slow collapse. How clients who had been with me for years suddenly canceled without explanation. How the negative reviews piled up. How I went from being respected in my field to being a cautionary tale. "The worst part wasn't the financial aspect," I said. "It was the shame. Walking into a grocery store and seeing former clients look away. Having parents pull their teenagers from my classes because they didn't want their kids around someone like me. Being reduced to one mistake in everyone's eyes." "Do you think Oliver's public post was justified?" Rebecca asked carefully. I considered the question. I think he had every right to tell his story. What happened to him was real and painful. But I also think there's a difference between telling your story and weaponizing it. His initial post was honest. But then the Instagram account, the podcast, the book, at some point it stopped being about healing and started being about building a brand on our suffering. "Have you ever spoken to Oliver directly?" "No." "What would I say? I'm sorry I slept with your wife? I'm sorry I was part of destroying your marriage?" Those words feel empty. And anything I say would just sound like I'm trying to make myself feel better. Rebecca moved on to other questions. About how the experience changed me. About whether I thought I deserved what happened. About whether I'd forgiven myself. That last question hit hard. "I don't know if forgiveness is the right word," I said. "I've accepted what I did. I've tried to learn from it. I've tried to be better. But I don't think you can do something like that and just forgive yourself and move on. It becomes part of who you are. You carry it with you." After we finished, Rebecca mentioned that she had also reached out to Oliver and Carolina. Oliver had declined to participate, saying he had moved on and didn't want to revisit that period of his life. Carolina hadn't responded at all. "I think I'll be able to put together a compelling piece even without them," Rebecca said. "Your perspective alone provides a lot of insight into the human side of these online exposure situations." The article came out 6 months later in a major online publication. Rebecca had done exactly what she said she would. She explored the lasting impact of public shaming without sensationalizing the details. She used pseudonyms for all of us and focused on the broader implications. The article got a lot of attention. People debated in the comments about whether public shaming was ever justified, about whether people deserved second chances, about the responsibility of the person who exposes wrongdoing versus the person who committed it. I read through some of the comments. Many people said I deserved everything that happened to me. Some said the punishment exceeded the crime. A few shared their own stories of being publicly shamed and how it had affected their lives years later. One comment stood out. It was from someone with the username Moving Forward 2023, and it simply said, "As the person who was betrayed in a similar situation, I can say that revenge didn't make me happy. Building a new life did. I hope everyone in this story finds peace." I wondered if it was Oliver. It sounded like something he might say. But I'd never know for sure. The article had an unexpected effect. I started getting messages from other people who had been publicly shamed for various reasons. Some had made mistakes like mine. Others had been falsely accused or had become collateral damage in someone else's drama. They wanted to know how I coped, how I rebuilt, whether life ever felt normal again. I wasn't qualified to give advice, but I tried to be honest. I told them that time helps but doesn't erase. That some people will never forgive you and you have to accept that. That you have to find a way to live with yourself even when others won't let you forget. One woman, Anna, kept in touch. She had been exposed online for an affair with her boss. Lost her job, her husband, her friends. 3 years later, she was still struggling to find employment because her name was forever linked to that incident online. How do you keep going? She asked me during one of our phone conversations. You find small things to hold on to, I told her. For me, it was teaching dance. Even when I lost most of my clients, there were a few who stayed. Those few reminded me that I wasn't just my worst mistake. I was also someone who could help people feel confident, who could share something I loved. You have to find your version of that. Talking to Anna and others like her made me realize something. Oliver had built his healing into a public brand. He had turned his pain into purpose. There was nothing wrong with that, it helped a lot of people. But there was also value in the quiet work of rebuilding without an audience. In learning to be okay with the fact that you won't get recognition or forgiveness. In doing the right thing simply because it's right, not because anyone will applaud you for it. I never became famous for my redemption. I never wrote a book or started a podcast. I just slowly, quietly built a life that I could live with. That's not the dramatic ending people want. There was no moment where everyone realized I had changed and welcomed me back. There was no grand gesture that erased what I'd done. There was just day after day of showing up, doing good work, being honest, and trying to be worthy of the second chance I'd been given. 8 years after the affair, I met someone. Her name was Diane, and she was a physical therapist who referred some of her patients to my dance classes as part of their rehabilitation. She was divorced, had a teenage son, and had been through her own share of difficult experiences. On our third date, I told her about Carolina and Oliver. About everything that had happened. I figured she deserved to know who she was getting involved with. She listened quietly, then said, "Thank you for telling me. That must have been hard to go through." "I deserved it," I said. "Maybe," she replied. "But you're not that person anymore. I can see that. The question is whether you can see it too." Was a good question. Could I see myself as anything other than the man who had destroyed a marriage? Could I accept that people can change even when I was the one who needed to change? I'm still working on that. Oliver, from what I hear, is thriving. His foundation has helped thousands of people. He's remarried to someone who seems wonderful. He's created something meaningful from his pain. Carolina disappeared completely. The last anyone heard, she had moved to the Pacific Northwest and was working at a bookstore. No more writing, no more trying to be famous. Just a quiet life away from everything. And me? I'm teaching dance. I'm in a relationship with a good person who knows my past and chose to be with me anyway. I'm not wealthy or famous or particularly successful by most measures. But I'm honest now. I don't lie to myself about who I am or what I did. I don't pretend I was a victim. I own my mistakes and try to do better every day. That's all any of us can do, really. Own our truth even when it's ugly. Especially when it's ugly. Because the hardest dance to learn isn't the one you perform for others. It's the one you do alone, in the mirror, when you have to face who you really are. And that dance never ends. YouTube may no longer suggest my channel to you, so subscribe to it to receive new interesting stories. You will also help the channel grow and improve the quality of its content. The screen now displays a playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to. You can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.